right, and we're back with another week and another script. How's it going, man?
It's going really well. It's great to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you back here. We got yeah, we're kind of changing. Weather's getting better. Things are picking up. Some horrible things are ending. Some interesting things are starting. It's a good time of year.
Horrible. I'm still waiting for the horrible things to end, but yeah.
Well, there's far fewer of them now than there were like 5 years ago. That's pretty certain.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, listen, it's better direction than what it was prior. Yeah, so yeah, we've got a fun show for everyone. Excuse me. It's really warm where I am right now. About 25 degrees Celsius where I am at the moment. We got a heat wave coming after a snowfall yesterday. So yeah, I'm a little dry. I got two-liter bottles of water next to me because it's so dry where I am. But I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm happy to have you here with me, Price. So yeah, we've got a really fun show planned for everyone today. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I'm your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week, returning champion, Price of Reason. So happy to have you back, sir.
I'm happy to be here, and I don't know if I'm the champion, but I'm one of the contenders for the championship, I think.
It's getting there, yeah. I mean, it's 110 episodes already. It's pretty miraculous. We've reviewed 110 different screenplays. So it's only a drop in the ocean, but it's still been given a lot of good insight to all our wonderful listeners out there. So very happy to have you here. This week's script is titled Untouchable. It was from the 2025 Blacklist. It placed fourth with 30 votes, and it was written by Julian Silver and Reiss Clauson-Wolf. Price, could you share with us the log line for Untouchable?
Sure, right away. Hold on. Okay, I got it. The true exploits of Elliot Ness during his hunt for the Torso murder, a serial killer whose bloody reign terrorized 1930s Cleveland.
That's right. So synopsis is as follows. After his triumph over Al Capone, legendary lawman Elliot Ness arrives in Cleveland as public safety director, determined to dismantle corruption and restore order. But when a gruesome serial killer begins terrorizing the city's underbelly, Ness launches a relentless hunt to bring the monster to justice. With his reputation, family bonds, and the city's fragile peace on the line, he delves into a web of horror that threatens to consume him. Can he unmask the killer before the shadows claim another victim? So this is a period piece of real-life persons, so we have a little bit of some dramatic liberties that are being taken with this story, although they do kind of overlap with a number of interesting factoids about the man of Elliot Ness and his life post-prohibition. And yeah, what did you think about the first little opening that we had here with the script there, Price? It kind of starts off sort of like a celebration of sorts, a real swanky party, right?
Yes. Kind of, just giving us a glimpse of what it looks like to be Elliot Ness in this new location that he's at. Because we know him from the guy that, got Al Capone, but this kind of gives a sort of a different vibe. He's in a different place right now, both in his life and, the geographical location. So I guess it's a good way to give you a bit of exposition in a way that's not like too overbearing. And also you have some expectation when you think of the name Elliot Ness. So I think that this sort of grounds you into what's going on here in this specific screenplay.
Yeah, because this is our kind of introduction. There's a party being thrown. Elliot Ness has been appointed to he's not really a lawman anymore. He's been appointed as a public safety the head of the public safety department, and it's an election year, so the mayor is really kind of using him to secure votes because Mayor Burton, at the time, finds Elliot Ness a pretty popular guy. And if you know your history about Elliot Ness, this is a period where a lot of Elliot Ness's kind of reputation is being questioned. And the reason it's being questioned, and we know this now, is because Alfonso Capone was essentially arrested for tax evasion, which had nothing to do with Elliot Ness's efforts in trying to stop him. But somehow Elliot Ness got some significant credit with that. And this goes into a pretty interesting flaw explored with Mr. Elliot Ness, which is that he likes being acknowledged for his accomplishments more than the accomplishments that he achieves himself. And I thought this was a pretty interesting character flaw, because as he's milling about through this party, there are people, questioning a little bit of who he is, why he's here. There are some that don't like the fact that he has fired a number of police officers across all different divisions or precincts under suspicion of corruption or violating their position within the department, and people are getting the sense that they're feeling a lot safer in the city now that Ness is here. But underneath, there is some weird disappearances occurring. And one of them happens pretty quickly. Because after we get this little organized party here where you got Elliot Ness and his wife Edna, they're kind of milling around. We get introduced to a congressman who isn't really too fond of Elliot Ness because of his presentation of being moral and ethical, or at least so it is it is established. And Ness gets so annoyed with Congressman Sweeney and him kind of subtly mocking him that he decides to leave right when Mayor Burton wants to bring him up on the dais and kind of garner more potential votes for being a supporter of Elliot Ness, who's currently pretty popular. So much popular so that some people have actually walked up to Mr. Ness and asked for his autograph. Like, that's the status that Elliot is in when we're introduced to him. And Elliot doesn't really he's not presented in a way where he's super happy that he's giving the autograph, but it's almost to the point where it's reflexive, where he's like, okay, I know what you're doing. Here you go. And then he's kind of like laser focused on whatever his next task is. And there's a location that pops up quite frequently in this script, and that's called the Clifton Club. So I guess it's like a restaurant and dance parlor. And that's kind of where
who's in town or hanging out there, I guess.
Like, 7 or 8 years ago earlier, this would have been the place where you get all the illegal alcohol in Cleveland. The very thing that Ness was trying to stop. But now it's, of course, a social club for a lot of socialites, and as you said, the who's who of the city. And we get a nice little kind of like subtle point of interest with this character named Willie the Valet, who he only has a couple of lines, but he's this eager guy that picks up the Ness's car, parks it, and then when Ness wants to leave, he quickly goes, fetches the car, and drives off. And then after he leaves this party, kind of embarrassing the mayor with his absence, we go to a neighborhood in Cleveland called Kingsbury Run. And it's quickly established that this is like, a shanty town of sorts. This is the place where people go to be forgotten if they're poor, and they just kind of, survive as opposed to anything else. And, this old guy comes out and of his little tent or shanty tent, and he goes to the dirty river, and with a bar of soap starts washing himself until he sees something bobbing up in the stream. And as he gets closer, we recognize that it's the valet that we saw, but we can't recognize him from his face because his head is missing, as is his arms and legs. And this starts. This is the inciting incident of the story where we have possibly a serial killer in Cleveland right now. So this is a lot of stuff that happens in the first 10 pages. Want to get your thoughts, Price. How did you like kind of like the establishment of Elliot Ness's character, Edna, and then the reveal of the first crime to investigate?
Well, throughout what we're going to do here in this stream, I have to separate two separate things. One, if you're asking me if I think it was written in a way that was decent, giving us some exposition, telling us where he's at, setting the mood of the story, the time, giving us a glimpse into this kind of serial killer, all of that was done fine. I, for some reason, even from this opening, didn't love... I felt like I knew where this screenplay was going. I hoped I was wrong, and unfortunately it was going in a direction that I didn't, I didn't love the exact direction it was taking, but I'll get to that later, why I think that.
Sure.
As far as right now, if it's serviceable enough, it's serviceable enough.
Well, I will say this. One of the style that I picked up on this is it's trying to be kind of similar to the same style that, the classic movie The Untouchables was. Kind of like a little bit rigid, some matter-of-factly things, scenes that feel empty on the surface but later come back to have a bit more meaning to them. Kind of boilerplate, in my opinion, I would say, with the opening. It's just like, oh, okay, yep, we go from this section to here. We do have the cause and effect aspects where the congressman kind of gets under Ness's skin and he just wants to leave. That's fine. That shows a little bit of his character here. And then we get the setup of the reveal of a murder victim, and then it's followed up by another character introduction. I would say it's a decent one because it's about Clayton Fritchie, who is a journalist for one of the local papers here. And what interests me is he seems to have some pretty easy access to a guy like Elliot Ness. I thought that was kind of fascinating because I would think, well, I mean, it kind of comes back a little bit later to Ness's ego, but I would think that even for a man in his position, he'd probably want to have some distance from the press, given how much the press caused him trouble when he was in Illinois, trying to get Capone.
Right. I mean, the thing is that he did have like at least a guy there that he ended up having some kind of. He didn't really like him or seek him out, but he had that annoying reporter in the Untouchables movie, which so that he actually understands sometimes that you need to communicate with the press. That didn't really bother me as much. The thing that I'll say is this, and I think it's important to point this out now rather than explaining later what I'm troubled by.
Sure.
There's two separate Elliot Nesses, okay? There's Elliot Ness, maybe the real guy that lived and who he was. There's Elliot Ness, sort of the mythological, almost, wholesome superhero type of guy, which, to be honest, I think that in reality, he really wasn't the superhero that everybody, in the kind of movies you see him.
Right.
And at the same time, he also wasn't a bum. You know what I mean? Like, this idea, and I think that they early on try to explain, well, he didn't really do much to capture Al Capone. The truth is, even though you can say, well, maybe in the movie Untouchables, they really celebrate him, maybe too much, maybe he's like this wholesome hero, but the truth is, without him and his Untouchables gathering some ledgers and getting some real information about how Capone was running his empire and all the ruffling of feathers that they did, they wouldn't have been able to prosecute him. So it's not true that he had nothing to do with him being arrested. Now, in reality, was he as wholesome as Kevin Costner was in that movie?
No,
he wasn't.
No. Yeah.
He was in reality a guy that had extramarital affairs, a bunch of wives. Like, certainly, I really think that the movie leaned into the mythology. But at the same time, for me, maybe because I grew up and there have been TV shows and movies and things like that, and you always think of Elliot Ness as this kind of wholesome, like, good guy that wants to get things done. This to me felt like more of a, Ryan Johnson writing a screenplay about Elliot Ness. Like, how do we kind of make him not look like he's so wholesome and so great? And it may not have been so apparent in the first scene where they still do the bait and switch of you thinking that it's like an extension of that movie that you saw that you liked, the Brian De Palma one. But as you move forward in this one, it starts to kind of feel not like that. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I don't think it's a Ryan Johnson approach because there's he doesn't abandon the values that drives him in this script compared to what we've seen Ryan Johnson do with established characters.
I guess so, but all I know is that in the original Untouchables movie, I'm liking this character the whole time. And in this one, I kind of don't like him as much. And as the movie moves forward more and more, I like him less and less. Like, he seems less of this kind of guy with, like, really strong, like, ethics and morals. Like, yeah, I know that in the Untouchables he had to bend all of that, and Sean Connery had to explain that he had to, be tougher and all that stuff. But at his core, like, you saw this guy that was a bit wholesome, and I feel like they totally didn't go in that direction here. They want the best of both worlds. They want you to remember the movie you saw that you liked. They want this to be sort of a spiritual successor to the Brian De Palma movie, but they want to make him kind of a douche. And somehow I don't love it.
Well, I mean, they're not doing it in a sense of insulting. They're doing it in the sense that he was known to have an affair on his first wife. He ended up marrying the person he had the affair with. And then that didn't last too long. And then he got married a third time. And then he died of a heart attack. So, like, well, they're definitely trying to be more honest with the character and also make him more complex, which I actually appreciated. But, like, yeah, like, even though him and his Untouchables were kind of throwing monkey wrenches in the operation of Alfonso Capone, it was not him or his office that found the evidence needed to... Because, again, he was arrested and tried for tax evasion, but he was punished for all the crimes that Elliot Ness couldn't prove that he committed.
Right, but the question is, and I suspect, if I'm not mistaken, we can look into it. But I think that at least some of the evidence, even for the tax stuff, I think that Elliot Ness and his team were able to round up some of that. So I don't think that, like, they operated in a vacuum and nothing they did led to the final outcome. Sure,
well, I don't
when
think
it comes
that either.
to the trial. Yeah. When it comes to the trial, you're right. It wasn't his department, but it's almost like, when you watch the show Law and Order, the prosecution there, they do whatever they do, but they need the police officers to do what they do first, or else they can't do whatever they're doing. You know what I mean? So I don't think that him and his team didn't have value. Maybe, you could say, well, the people that actually did the trial, they don't get enough credit or whatever. Maybe you're right, whatever, but I think that... I do appreciate what he did there. But what I was trying to tell you was there's two Elliot Nesses. Yes, I agree with you. He had a bunch of wives. He was a womanizer. And maybe this depiction of him is more accurate. Maybe he was a douche. I kind of like the mythological, all-American, wholesome hero. Even if it's a phony thing that I've grown up with, that, like, we were all fooled into thinking that he was this wholesome, all-American hero guy. I kind of like that, and it annoys me.
Well, the thing is, it's not replaced at all, because every time he is with his colleagues or in his job as an authority figure, he is that. The difference is the fact that him and his wife, they're having marital troubles. He's a workaholic, and she's very much kind of pushing him away through passive-aggressive actions. And that's the only time where you see, like, the human side of him come through, because there's moments here where he realizes that one of his officers is a homosexual in a time where he would be arrested for that, and he doesn't care because he's a good cop.
Yeah, and that also is a bit like, they have this, I don't think that that's based on a real character. And, like, did they really need, when I was saying Ryan Johnson, here's what I think. Okay, I understand that they could go into the history books and present him this way, but I almost feel like they said, let's do like an Elliot Ness movie, but instead of showing him as this kind of wholesome all-American hero, let's be more like true. Let's look at all his flaws and highlight that. Let's bring like a partner cop that also secretly is into dudes or whatever. It's fine. You could do that, but it just feels like those annoying people that annoy me all the time were sitting there trying to like dig away at some kind of mythological American hero. I am not arguing. It's not like Luke Skywalker, because if you look historically, there's things you're right too, script. But I the question is, as a viewer, that likes Elliot Ness, likes murder mysteries, likes this kind of period piece, is this what I wanted? Is this the kind of movie I wanted to see? And that's where I struggle with this script as we go along. And let's continue with it. I don't
Sure.
want to. I'll point out each point, but you mentioned the cop. And I felt that was very kind of modern day nonsense. You know what I mean? No, I don't care. I mean, if they did a murder mystery today and a cop, it turned out that, his partner was into dudes, that wouldn't surprise me because we're in 2026. I'm just saying that to do this kind of period piece and like, put that in there as well, it feels like the obligatory checkmark type of situation. That even today, when they do something that's like a historical, a period piece, whatever, they have to look at what's like trendy today to shove it in there. You know what I mean?
Or in some cases, but in other cases, there were people who came out, in the late 1980s saying that they were gay and work with Ness, and he protected them. So I'm like, this is not as agenda driven as you might suspect.
Okay, that's fair. And I actually
Because
did not know that.
again,
So.
you got to realize that. Listen, if this was agenda driven, we'd probably see way more of it in the script than what we actually do. The other part too is that, I mean, you don't want to make your hero a Mary Sue, and Ness, if you don't highlight some of the flaws he has or the struggles that he's facing, and you make him just this purely, good person, which for the job he is, he tries to live up to the standards of what that responsibility is. But the thing is, the moment you start saying that he can't have any flaws, or that the flaws have to be superficial and something that don't compromise or at least challenge his moral ethics, that's where you get into Mary Sue territory. And that's where you get into things that are boring. Like even in the Untouchables, right? The ideology that Ness had was also his flaw, because it kept on causing him to butt heads against everybody else that he needed their cooperation in order to do his job, right? And in this case here, we still have that, because he's butting heads with other people who are, corrupt and put in positions of power, and he still gets, knocked down here and there, but it doesn't deter him. And that's where he still has that type of heroic, definition and fortitude that allows him to continue pushing on, even when the stress starts getting to him, and he starts that shield he's putting up starts to have some cracks formed into it. But at the end of the story, it doesn't break, and he grows from that. Like that's the arc of what this is, because it is based off like very real events, and in this particular story here, it is fairly well documented from the newspapers and the cold case files of the efforts that Mr. Ness went through to try and capture this serial killer in Cleveland at the time. But before we get to the details there, I want to point out that, yeah, we have this situation where he's coordinating with the press, and he's being polite to Fritchie, because Fritchie's kind of making all these implications, using some conjecture now, and some creative liberty, and all Ness wants to do is just say, like, this is my basic quote: I'm working to clean up the city. That's it. Like, I'm not naming names. I'm not doing anything untoward. That's basically all I'm doing. And then he gets interrupted by a character named Paul Marlowe. And so this is a fictional man who is a hybrid of a number of officers that worked with Elliot Ness over the years. And it has one little stipulation, which is we find out that, he's closeted. It's really only addressed in 2 scenes, and then never again for the rest of the film, or for the script. But he comes in because he's, I guess, leading the the department in this body that's been found, and they've pulled in the witness, the person who alerted the authorities of this body, and they're trying to keep Fritchie. Keep forgetting his name because it's such a peculiar one. He's trying to prevent Fritchie from trying to break the news to let to stir panic of sorts. And this is all happening in like the shantytown area of Kingsbury's Run, and this is where we see some of that heroic nature that you mentioned before. So Marlowe arrives. He arrives on the scene, and he basically gets knee deep into the muck of the river, and he's telling these other cops, "You're coming with me. We're dragging this river, and we're going to try and find the other body parts of this torso that was received." And we learn a little bit about this place. Like, yeah, it's within the it's part of Cleveland. But it's a place where the rest of the city tries to forget. It's very disgusting, run down. Lots of people are sick there and poor. It's squalid conditions. And as they make their way in the river forks, they split off, and it's Ness and Marlowe on one path, and these two other officers on the other. And they end up going to the end of where the river kind of banks up, and they find a ton of limbs and torsos just bobbing out of the water, like as if it got weighed down by some of the mud, and their disturbance just kind of loosened them, and they just kind of rose to the top, and they're all kind of bloated. It's really quite it's cleanly described, but it's also really vivid at the same time. They have this one part here where like a body breaches the surface, and they quote, "It's bloated, gray, no head. The water shifts with it, rolls out in ripples." Like, it's simple description, but pretty vivid. I appreciated that part. So we get into this like kind of section here where we find out that it's not just one body, it's many more bodies. Do you remember how many bodies were mentioned?
I thought they said 8.
Yeah.
I thought they said 8.
Yeah.
I will say this, is that scene with him and the cop and whatever was going around there, I thought that was a pretty good scene. Like, there were moments in this script that could have worked in terms of like a murder mystery. So in that sense, that was actually a strong scene that you described just now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's obviously not pleasant. It's not a pleasant scene, but it's strong in terms of like creating the atmosphere and explaining the stakes of like what a serious serial killer exists here.
Yeah, and I liked how when Fritchie sort of gets involved, because he's brought back again, and he mentions that it's 8 people. Ness goes into this little brief reveal, like, "Have you ever heard of Jack the Ripper?" He's like, "Oh yeah, the maniac in London." He's like, "Yep." And Ness tells him, like, he only killed 5, and we got someone that's killed 8. So clearly you have someone more dangerous than Jack the Ripper. And also the other part is this looming question that Ness is trying to figure out, which is, why is it taking so long to figure out that this has been happening in Cleveland? So he's got some questions, especially with the current commissioner of the police department. And then we get a little bit more of like Edna's involvement, where she sees the newspaper and starts to, criticize the article, claiming that it was Elliot who came up with the name the Mad Butcher for this new, Cleveland's version of Jack the Ripper. And Ness, says, that was Fritchie doing that. And we see that Edna's reads the newspaper and quotes to him like, "Public Safety Director Elliot Ness has personally ensured that the Mad Butcher who did this will be brought to justice." Kind of showcasing a little bit of like Ness's possible ego, but also maybe Fritchie's creative angles on things, because he pops up a few more times in the script. In some cases trying to help Elliot, in other cases throwing him for a loop as to what he wants to do and what he's trying to get away with, or trying to accomplish, that would be a better term. And this is where we find out like that him and Edna are having some problems, because she reminds him that when he was a cop, dedicated to trying to bust these bootlegging rings and Al Capone, he was essentially a ghost to her. And the whole reason that they moved out to Cleveland and that he took this position is that he would be more available to her and be a fresh start. And this is where, and Ness says a pretty kind of biting line, where he says that he won't shrink his duty because his wife's afraid of being lonely. And I thought that was kind of an interesting reveal here, because it shows that what his priorities are at this point. And we're on this journey of him kind of reassessing what those priorities are. And so, like, I'm trying to remember much of, like, what Edna was like in The Untouchables, if I remember seeing her at all.
She was super wholesome and nice, and that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
That there, and I know this sounds weird, but there are two Elliot Nesses. I said it at the beginning, and I said it now. This is a movie that's about the more real-life Elliot Ness. It's also with creative liberties and things like that, but I personally prefer the mythical hero Elliot Ness, and that's why I struggle with it with this movie, even though whatever we talked about until now isn't necessarily bad writing. It's actually one of the, in some ways, one of the better scripts that we've gone over. I mean, it's serviceable. The scenes are competently written, and they do whatever they need to do, and yet still, I keep feeling the weight of this let's show him warts and all. It's like, yeah, if you want to see Elliot Ness warts and all, his life is very different than the mythological hero. This one stays more true to that.
Yeah, and there's something we said for either one, which is, do you want to put your heroes on a pedestal to the point where their flaws are now hidden, to the point where if they ever get revealed, the rest of the world would be betrayed by the reputation of the person, or would you rather have a more humanized version of a man that has flaws but did something of great significance for the people that he was responsible for?
I'll put it this way. I think there were still ways to show that he has flaws in how he does his job. Maybe he'd grown a bit confident, after what happened with Capone. There were ways to show that his character is in a different place, but it's still the same character with the same kind of morals and ideals, but, that he has flaws or things are different from him now. There were ways of doing that, but I feel like here, rather than choosing something that's a little more in the middle, they went all in the other direction. If the Untouchables, the Brian De Palma one, gives us the wholesome hero, this one is going to go into, like, hard other side of the spectrum.
Kind of like a Red Dragon thing.
Yes, and I somehow, they're calling it Untouchable, so they obviously want you to go into this thing with the feeling of, oh, I saw the Untouchables, why don't I watch this? This is sort of like a spiritual successor to that one. Mm-hmm. But this is why I feel like it's the modern day spiritual successor. If the only way I can approach this is if I think to myself, I never saw the other Untouchable movie. This is a movie about the real life Elliot Ness later in life. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the other one. Mm-hmm. It's just very hard to separate, and I'm sure a lot of moviegoers would have hard separating as well. And you know how it is when they market movies. They're not going to say, hey guys, do you want to see a movie where Elliot Ness is like the real life one and he's like a bum? I don't think they're going to market it that way. They're going to make it seem like
this.
This is like the spirits, this is the successor. Did you like The Untouchables? Did you like that movie? Well, now you get to see more of that. And it's not true. You're not seeing more of that. That's just my opinion. But you're gonna hear me grumpy throughout this stream, Script. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, because you're holding on to a fantasy, and while this is definitely still in the fantasy element, it's trying to humanize a living legend. And I mean, I will say this toward without spoiling the script, the very end of it, the position that Elliot Ness is in is really kind
rotten.
of no, it's a really good one.
I was miserable when I saw that happen at the end. He was in a rotten situation.
Oh no, he overcame his flaw at the end. That was what it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that he had so many flaws to begin with.
He has one flaw. But, he's so upset. He was obsessed. And that's also
Like,
another flaw from the Untouchables, is that he was committed and obsessed to getting this particular person but caught and behind bars.
I really like what they did in the Untouchables movie. It's a movie that I really like. I saw it as a kid, and I always have really liked that movie. So I don't know. Maybe it's like what I'm saying isn't based on logic. Maybe it's more on sentiments. But seeing that movie and what that original movie means to me, and then trying to make it seem like this is somehow in the same universe as that one. This is what troubles me. But let's go on.
I mean, I'm not
I don't
100%
want to
sure
bring
still
everybody down.
I'm not sure it's 100% in the same universe, but I mean, it's the same character and part of his life. So there is that. And it's not the only time there's been an Elliot Ness story, whether it's film or television, about his time with Capone. And heck, a lot of the novels of Elliot Ness, even the ones with the Nathan Heller series by Max Allan Collins, they show Elliot Ness in a far more honest light compared to the Untouchables films. But that's something else. This one here, what's fascinating is that we have this important beat. This is like, the Elliot Ness type of thing that you would probably find very familiar with the Untouchables, where he's talking to the mayor and he's like, I need money, I need men, I need every favor you owe, no red tape, no oversight, no delay. We're doing this. And Mayor Burton's like, absolutely, because it's an election year and I'm the one who hired you. So if you do this, I'm going to get reelected. I like that implication because I like the fact that we're seeing this big ambition, this drive to the character. Now, what's interesting is because he's doing his job, which is, even though he's the department head of public safety, he's not a cop, he doesn't wear a badge, but he has a certain level of authority in coordinating with the police department. And because it's occupying so much of his time, we have Edna upset about a repetition of the previous obsessive case that he was in. She decides to just kind of get out of the house so that she's not waiting all alone. And she leaves a note for him, says that gone to the Clifton Club, and then she heads out there. And she's just, doing her own thing, just sitting down, has a meal, but is not really eating it, just kind of off in her head, but at least she's out of the house. And this is where we kind of get exposed to the nephew of Congressman Sweeney named Francis. And he's a, contemporary age, he's a charming guy. And you get the sense that he's trying to seduce Edna. And she's a little resistive at first, until he starts winning her over. But he hasn't really kind of pushed beyond the normal boundaries of being fully inappropriate yet. And it does kind of set up, or reinforce the idea that, in their effort to kind of save their marriage and move away from one city of corruption to another, it might be repeating the same conflicts that they had before. And Edna's taking this action to kind of not repeat that level of stress, that level of anxiety, that life of loneliness that Elliot commented on earlier. And what do you think about Francis as a character? Because he plays a pretty significant role as this story goes on, being essentially something of like either the other man or just a friend who is causing distress with Elliot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was fine. Like I said, if you wanted to go the route of Elliot Ness is having trouble with his wife, and she's sort of lying to him, putting notes, and then trying to hide the notes, and she's meeting up with this guy, and he buys her like a parakeet or something. I guess it's fine. I mean, they kind of established that he's this, very kind of charismatic guy that really knows how to speak with her.
Yeah.
In a way, and really, and he's also astute because he realizes that there's probably problems between her and Elliot Ness, and he's trying to sort of capitalize on that. I think that all of that was done well enough. They also managed to combine the idea that, Elliot Ness himself has a mistress. And
Well, that comes a
again,
little later. That comes as a byproduct, right? Because while Edna's out here, Elliot's at the police station, and we got like Commissioner Davis here, who's in his is a rough guy, he's in his 40s, and we find out that the person who provided information about the body originally has been under arrest for at least a day, and Ness wants to go and see him, and Commissioner's a little resistive of that, but when he does get in there, he finds that this guy, who's named Luther, has been beaten by the police for most of the day because the information he's not giving them the information that the police want, or at least the answers that the police would wish to hear. And this is where we get more of like Ness as that type of moral compass, the shining star of moral
this was a
attitudes.
scene that I didn't mind, but like you're actually hitting upon a point that I agree with here, that there is certain scenes, at least for me, that he does act like Elliot Ness. He does have some moral, and he goes in, he's like, why are you beating this guy? He'll tell you whatever you want. He didn't do this. He's just trying to get a hot meal or whatever it is. And I liked that. That was the kind of thing that I liked about Elliot Ness. But to squeeze that in between like his wife sort of not being, sort of having possibly an affair, I don't even know.
She's in a point of being resentful of Ness putting his job above her.
I understand that in real life they had problems and they ended up divorcing, but what am I going to tell you, Script? I like that in the original, in the real Untouchables. It's the real fake Untouchables, or whatever you want to call it. I like the Brian De Palma one. His wife is like supportive. They're like a tight unit. They even had like a girl, which doesn't even exist in this movie. I don't even think he had a girl in real life.
No, he didn't have any children. He adopted one during his third marriage.
And it doesn't even matter. I love that he had a kid in Untouchables. It's like I told you. Yes, they made him a folk hero, and maybe it has nothing to do with what happened in reality. But I want the folk hero. I want Elliot Ness the folk hero, and he didn't feel folky hero enough to me. Although there were some scenes that at least showed that he had morals. I'll give you that.
Well, I mean,
and this scene with the police investigation was a decent one, yes.
Well, yeah, with Luther, he has this little monologue. He's like, whatever's out there is hunting us, and, it's taking people who are, without homes, without names, and, he says, no one's doing a thing because we're just trash down there, and Ness looks straight in the eyes and says, not to me, because he doesn't look at Luther just because he's homeless or down his luck, like a person that's trashed. Like
there were brief moments. This was a moment that I liked.
It's not that they're brief. It's really consistent when it comes to the investigation. But when he's not on the job, the other part of Elliot Ness comes out.
It pains me that when he's not on the job, they wanted to go for real Elliot Ness. You know what? I can accept everything about the investigation, and you're right. He shows he has his morals in a lot of places, but to kind of squeeze in there the kind of downer of his personal life and the more realistic approach, I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, the thing that I like is that even when he puts kind of Commissioner Davis on notice for treating this guy like this, and he comes home, and Edna's not there, and he sees the note, he doesn't stay home. He goes to the Clifton, and you get the sense that he's kind of go there, meet up with her, maybe, join her for dinner, do the husband thing in public. But when he gets there, he sees Edna laughing it up with Francis Sweeney, and that's the inciting incident for him to realize, like, oh, she may have given up on him as a husband. And what's kind of and to your point, I agree with this part here, was kind of peculiar is that the first woman that kind of talks to him after he's like given autographs to a couple of young men that are fans, he decides to just join her at the bar for a drink, and that this is where he meets Eveline. And for those of you who are familiar with Elliot Ness's actual history, Eveline Michelot it was his second wife.
Yeah, it's all very convenient, and I don't need any of it. I could have deleted all of that. You would have improved the movie in my eyes if you just made it so it's fine if his wife is feeling he's too much at work, and that's something that causes some kind of tension. Did I really need as much of what we got in this movie, and including his I didn't like seeing his wife because I'm still envisioning the wholesome wife from the first movie. I didn't like seeing her going and meeting up with this guy. I didn't like him now with this other mistress lady that then in reality became his other wife. I know that this is a realistic approach, but I don't need it. It's not. It's not what I need. I want the mythological hero. When I'm thinking of Elliot Ness, even when I watch The Untouchables, I am 100% sure. I've always known that movie is not accurate to anything. But I like what they did with Elliot Ness there, and that's the hero. That's the mythological hero. And in this one, they're cleverly doing that thing where they slightly tear down the mythological hero, but they have sort of a reason to do it because they're like, well, we just went by the facts. We went with reality. I don't care about reality. I want the hero. I don't want the reality, personally.
But this part here doesn't really diminish his actions trying to be a hero, especially towards the climax and to what he's doing. But we have this kind of dynamic going on here where when Edna comes home, she sees her note is still exactly where she left it, and instead of leaving it there, she crumples it up, throws it into the trash, and then Elliot comes home a little bit later, and they have a little talk, and she lies to Elliot about her evening.
Which made me very sad. I liked in the first one that she was sending him these wonderful notes at work. And, now when she writes a note, it's to lie to him about her stepping out with some other guy. In the first one, she wrote him all these encouraging notes. She she made him lunch and stuff. And he had a sandwich that she made him when he was on a stakeout. It was a lot more wholesome and nice. I don't need this bitter wife thing. That's manipulating and writing these sneaky little post-it notes.
But the thing is, she destroyed the notes, assuming that Ness didn't see it, right? So she's hiding
But he did see it.
Yeah, but she doesn't know that.
This whole thing of them playing games with each other made me super sad when I was reading this script. It genuinely had a negative impact on me reading it.
Well, I mean, what they're trying to show here is a byproduct of what she'd already gone through. So let's say, for the sake of argument, she was that very supportive, did everything to help put it in there, and at the end of the day, she just did not feel that the effort was reciprocated. And even though they made this huge move, now she feels, oh, this new case has come onto our doorstep. Elliot's going to be out again. Is this going to be my life going forward? Am I going to be constantly having to be in not the forefront of his attention in life? Am I always going to be stuck in the background as an afterthought to Elliot versus his being his actual wife? And that's part of their conversation that they have later, and it's one that he has difficulty trying to answer.
I completely understand, and I am not saying that the real Mrs. Ness wouldn't have been grumpy about him dedicated to his job and probably drinking and hanging out with the ladies or whatever the real Elliot Ness did. Mm-hmm. And again, the question is, what is it that you're looking for in your Elliot Ness movie? And me seeing his wife do the note and throw it away, and him seeing her with another man, and then he's with another lady, I feel like I didn't want all of that. If you would have just focused on the murder investigation and hinted maybe there's some tension in their marriage, mm-hmm. I could have maybe let that slide because some years have gone by, things change in life. Maybe I would have been a little more receptive towards that. But so much screen time to their deteriorating marriage. It's not poorly written. It's not poorly written, these scenes, but I don't love them. Do you understand?
I understand that. That takes us into something that I found really fascinating, because we then start following Marlowe, and he's off duty. He's out on the town. He meets a guy that's known as Flower because he's got a flower tattoo on him, and they're definitely flirting, and they're walking, but they're also being followed by someone who we are kind of conveyed is the serial killer of this neighborhood. And what I thought was kind of interesting is that Marlowe gets jumped by three guys that he recognizes, and then the flower guy runs away, and he's beaten up. But we find out he's not beaten up because of his sexuality. He's beaten up because he told Elliot Ness, he basically bridged Elliot Ness to the commissioner, which led to the commissioner getting a little bit of a teardown by Ness for his behavior with a witness that they've been keeping for a day and beating up. I thought that was actually pretty interesting because it showed that the corruption that Ness was trying to fight wasn't predicated on those aspects. It was predicated on being loyal or disloyal. Right? So
I agree with you. And this is the same struggle that I have. I think that in isolation, the idea of those guys and their motivation for beating him up, I don't mind it. I would have preferred, if you ask me, that rather than it being how do I say this? It would have been, I think, more realistic to me if he was with a lady and that's not his wife, because he's married. It could have been a mistress or some lady that he meets at a club. I wouldn't have minded if that would have gone that way. And I will still say that the fact that they made it a male interest that he had, I think that was more of modern day, trying to make it more modern day, more gritty for modern day. I will 100% say again, if this was a murder mystery taking place in 2026, no problem at all. He's married, but he does this on the down low and whatever. This all makes sense to me in 2026. In this kind of, 1930-something that they're doing it?
35,
I'm not
yeah,
saying
like
that things like that didn't exist, but man, does it feel like some guy in a boardroom somewhere in Hollywood said, well, actually, they didn't even approve this one, so it's actually just the screenplay writers who wanted to maybe appease those type of people and be like, let's make it more for modern day. I don't need it modern day. It's a period piece. I'm not saying that things like that didn't happen in the 1930s. I'm just saying it feels forced to me. And I personally don't necessarily need it in this movie.
Okay.
It feels contrived. I don't know how to explain it to you. It feels like somebody we got to do it. We got to do it. Like everything. You know what it reminds me of? I'll tell you. I have a good way to explain it to you.
Okay.
Did you watch the show Perry Mason that they made on HBO? That not the Perry Mason with Raymond Burr, but actually the Perry Mason that they made with Matthew Rhys or whatever his name is on HBO.
No, I didn't check out the HBO version of Perry Mason.
It was happening in the 1920s or 30s or whatever it is, and any kind of modern day sort of agenda or messaging or whatever you want to call it was shoved in there. He was like a drunk bum, he's not the man. And then in addition to that, you had all these things where you had a lot of that kind of modern day, with this flower character, a lot of that in there, a lot of him looking dumb and the ladies around him looking better. This is all fine if you want to do a Perry Mason that's happening in 2026. Even then, I prefer to see him more heroic, but to make him a bum and unrealistic, bring all the check marks from 2026 and apply them to the 1920s or 30s, I don't prefer that. You know what I mean? If it's a period piece and it's a mythological hero like this, I prefer something else. I know I'm annoying. It's not that I'm saying that what these guys did here with the script, I'm not saying it's not legitimate. They have a right to do what they did with the script, but there's something about it that I, throughout me reading it, I pushed back. Almost every other scene, there was something here that I was pushing back against.
Okay, that's pretty interesting, because this one here was, it's something that they do, and it's done passively, but it's not a continuing aspect of this, because Marlowe, he gets beaten up. His initial story is that members of the mob did it, but Ness doesn't buy it because he's a clever enough guy, And Marlowe confesses that, yeah, it was some cops. They were ordered to beat the crap out of me because of me helping you. And I would say that's a very fascinating choice, because if this was ideologically driven, he would have been beaten up and this would have been a coming out moment. And it wasn't. Like, at all. It was
True.
I was out. They found me. They beat the stuffing out of me. That was it. And Ness doesn't even know about Marlowe's, closeted nature at this point. But what he does do is he ends up firing Commissioner Davis for that, because you don't have the right in your position to hurt people under your command at all. And he's like, I want your stripes, because you're not working here anymore. And it's a pretty good bold power move with regards to Ness and his convictions, because he's talking like, we're a team. You have to play by a team, and when you start beating up your own members for doing the right thing, how can I trust you? And this is also goes into another part of Ness's ambition, which is then this borrows a little bit from the Untouchables, where his ambition has garnered him a bit more responsibility than what he initially had, which is now he has to step in and be the commissioner and the head of public safety department at the same time. So he's pulling double duty. And this upsets Edna naturally, because now he's got two jobs, and she's not going to be seeing her husband anymore. And this causes a lot of controversy between Congressman Sweeney and Mayor Burton, because Sweeney primarily, because Sweeney doesn't like Ness at all, is trying to put pressure on Burton and Ness to, kind of sweep everything under the rug, get this done quickly, embolden the reputation of himself, the mayor, and kind of just have Ness go back to what he's doing, because he's very critical of the fact that you're firing all these police officers, you're reducing the manpower we need in order to keep this safe, and on top of that, you're upsetting the people who are part of the unions in the region, and those union people, they know how to vote, and I don't want them so upset that they're not going to vote me back into office. Burton, on the other hand, doesn't care. He thinks whatever Ness is doing is the right call, which I actually found was pretty cool. That you got the municipal government at odds with the congressional government over Ness and what he's trying to do to save Burton City.
Yeah, I agree.
Now this leads us into the subtle parts of Edna being a little bit resentful, because Elliot he comes down in the morning at home. He's asked about breakfast, and Edna makes a little snide remark. Don't they have donuts at the department? And he has to kind of that's her subtle way of saying, like, why did you do this? And
I liked supportive Edna. I don't like this bitter, annoying Edna that won't even make him like a muffin for breakfast. I mean, it is the 1930s. In the 1930s, your husband is a big shot. You make him a few muffins, or go eat donuts at the station, yo. Like, I don't need that, But that's just me.
That's fine. That it's you. That's okay. I mean, the thing is that there were times when. The whole reason the feminist movement started was because you had decades of women being really upset that they were not really spouses to their husbands. That is true,
but it didn't start. You're absolutely right, Script, but it didn't start in 1938. That's all I'll say. You're right.
The feminist movement did not start in 1938. No, it was the 60s, but it was a byproduct of that, because when you
byproduct, yes. If this movie was taking place in the 60s, I tell you, yeah, it makes sense that now she'd be pushing back because the women want their rights. I understand that. But in 1938, he wakes up, there's breakfast on the table. That's just how it is in 1938. There's no other way. Like, there's no... And also, I'm not saying that he didn't have issues in real life, and I don't know what ended up, maybe he was a womanizer and he did drink and his wife left him and all that. Maybe all that is true. I still think that circa the 30s, generally speaking, he would walk in a, he would go to the office after eating a nice breakfast at home.
It depends on the family, because I've traveled around the world, and I do remember stories of grandparents saying, like, if my husband made me upset, I was not cooking for him. Like that was how they communicated at that time.
I see.
Because again, it's
All
like,
right. Well,
if you don't want to have an actual argument, right? Like, you don't have a shouting match. Well, what do you do to let the person that you love know that you're upset with them? Well, you change a little bit of the routine, and that's what Edna's doing here. And Ness is a smart enough guy to understand that this is the case. And what's interesting about his flaw here is that he assumes that things will get back to normal once he captures this person. And I do wish we had a little bit something more, because we do get a sense of urgency from Ness about this, but we are missing something. Like, the urgency shouldn't just be enough of, I have to do this because it's the right thing to do to save people. It's also, I have to do this because I owe it to my wife to spend time with her after years obsessing over trying to capture Capone, and her being so supportive of me during that time. I owe her this, right? And we don't get that moment. And whether that's a real thing that happened with Elliot Ness, or whether it was never even something that occurred to him until, he married another woman. We do not know 100% for sure, because a lot of the information we have about Ness is through stories of his friends and his ex-wives, from interviews long after he had passed away. But what we do see is that Edna is spending more time with Francis. One thing I noticed that was pretty fascinating is that it's always at the Clifton Club or outside the Clifton Club. It's always in public that Edna is spending time with Francis. We never see a scene of them privately in another room or either each other's homes, nothing like that. And I thought that was kind of an interesting choice. Did you pick up on that, Bryce?
I did notice that, but I didn't, I couldn't tell you exactly what it meant at that time. I personally thought that it was implied that they were not always at the club. Mm-hmm. Because there was a time where Elliot Ness goes and he sees them, and then when he looks, they're gone. You know what I mean? They're not there anymore. Yeah. And we don't know what happens afterwards, right? So... Right, I thought they're gone because, they got a room somewhere, maybe. I was gonna say it, and I was trying to find a nice way to say it, and you put it very nicely. They got a room somewhere. Maybe, yeah. And now we don't know either way. The script never really confirms, but but like as we're getting a little bit of her story where she's hanging out with Francis Sweeney, Marlowe, still recovering, is going through a lot of the case evidence, and they have this brand new body, and it turns out it's the flower guy, and Marlowe is able to identify him and say, yeah, I was kind of with him the night we got jumped, and Ness has this very matter-of-fact response to it. He says, Marlowe, I don't care what you do in your off time. We need to know everything about the case. And that's where Marlowe says, yeah, we were being followed. I wasn't 100% sure what's going on. And it's like it was a black two-door old build, maybe a Chevrolet with a dented bumper. And so because all these bodies are showing up in this Kingsbury area, Ness says, okay, great, you're coming with me. We're going to do a stakeout, and we're going to see if we can find this guy. And because if he's attacking these people here in this neighborhood, this is clearly something of an opportunity for us to try and, nab him. And then we get this
interesting scene where Edna was gifted a cardinal, a baby cardinal, a lady cardinal, in a cage by Francis, and she brings it home, and she's really enamored by it. She's got a pet. She has something to take care of besides Elliot, and this is where Ness kind of shows his jealousy, which I thought is good because jealousy means that you still care about the person when they're spending time with someone else. And Edna, of course, lies to Elliot that she picked it out at the bird store or pet store or something. And
she sure lies a lot, this Edna.
She does, yeah. She and what's interesting is that even Elliot Ness sees right through it. Like, he even says, "Is that a gift from Frances Sweeting?" And she's like, "No, I picked it out for myself." And then he says, he tells her, like, "I'm going to be working nights for the foreseeable future." And she says, "Okay, we won't wait up," referring to herself and the cardinal bird. And it's a sad scene, because Edna's pretty much said, "I'm not going to give you all of my attention anymore, and the only way that's going to change is if you start coming home again." So, I mean, I like this. I like the dynamic just because it's an interesting conflict, and it's a conflict that's driven by the fact that this case is, and how Elliot approaches it, and also how Edna approaches it, is what causes the conflict between them. It's not an accepting of, "Oh, this is your job, okay, I'm just going to let things roll." It's about both of them wanting to be a little bit selfish when it comes to their relationship. Edna wants Elliot around a lot more, and Elliot wants to make sure that the responsibilities he's charged with are being met, and that requires a lot of his time and investment, and it conflicts with what Edna wants. And this is where Elliot gets a little bit jealous because he's suspecting that Edna is, getting her attention from another man, and to a degree she is. A man that Elliot doesn't know much about but regardless doesn't even like. And then this takes us into an interesting scene between Ness and Marlowe, where they kind of discuss about, like, Ness was wondering, even though he's married to Edna, is he still, married? Is it still a marriage itself? And we get a little bit of hint of that, of Marlowe saying, like, he's married. They both are lying to each other at the fact that she knows that he's more interested in men than her, but he won't leave her or divorce her because then it'd be revealing the truth that their marriage was a lie, and that the investment that they made with each other is meaningless. And he, even though he's attracted to men, he doesn't want to hurt her as a result. And that's actually the last time we hear of him talking about his personal life while they're on this stakeout. And Ness has this kind of scene here where he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to hurt my wife either, but I'm a public figure. Secrets are hard to keep, and there are things that I have to do in order to get the job done." And yeah, it's an interesting insight into Elliot Ness's drive as a character.
Yeah. Guess.
But this scene doesn't last too long because they quickly see the black sedan or the Chevrolet, and they follow it. And when Marlowe notices the dented bumper, they start getting closer, but they get a bit too close. The driver realizes that he's being followed, and so now we're in the car chase. And this is a pretty
I like the car chase.
Yeah.
Just so you know, see, again, this is another situation. The whole thing of him sitting and talking about the wife and the guy and whatever, his love interest, all of that was crappy. And then the cutting back and forth, and with his own, Elliot Ness's own deteriorating marriage, couldn't stand any of that. all of that annoyed me from the start until the end. And then we have this car chase, which I actually kind of liked. You know what I mean? It's sort of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of a screenplay for me.
Well, I mean, it's trying to have those character moments in between the action moments. Some of them tether into each other far better than others. This one here, I think, was them just trying to do like a catch up where we want to get inside Elliot's head. We want to talk about, his dedication, his obsession, and him questioning the relationship and that he has, and is Edna still a priority to him? And we contrast that with the guy who is married, has a beard essentially, and it's not something of an abusive relationship for Marlowe. It's there's definitely something legitimate to their initial marriage, but at some point over that time he decided not to resist these other feelings or other thoughts that he had. But he has it's an interesting conflict, because even I would say is, well, if you're not going to be honest with yourself and you're not going to be honest with your wife, there's a little bit of disrespect there. But then there's also the societal aspect of it, right? If he were to come out, he wouldn't be a cop anymore. He wouldn't have a job. He would have a very difficult time, even if he was divorced, providing alimony to his wife as a result of that. And then she would have this huge embarrassment that she married, a man who was of a different persuasion, and that could have other repercussions. So he's pretty much dug himself into a hole with her that there's no way out of in current society. And
this whole interaction was miserable.
I mean, it was supposed to be miserable and sad, because we're supposed to see
that's what I'm saying.
These guys, and it comes to their personal life, these guys don't have the best ones. The only type of joy or life that they experience is when they're in the pursuit of a criminal.
I want action-packed adventure. I want the hero Elliot Ness to go and do some good work. I don't want the more gritty and warts and all. I don't know.
I mean, but that's part of like the noir genre too. Like all your favorite, detectives, your Raymond Chandler characters, your
it's fine if this thing was
Dashiell
called
Hammett characters.
If instead of Elliot Ness, this movie was about John Smith, and you made this movie, I'd say fine, whatever. It's like a noir, whatever. But once you say Elliot Ness, you call it Untouchable, and there's a part of you that's kind of thinking of the Untouchable that you liked, then it starts becoming an issue for me.
Well, I mean, The Untouchables is a far more romanticized version of that story.
I love it. That's the best. That's what I want. Give me more of that. I wanted old man Ness going for one final crime.
Well, I mean, he's in his 30s here.
Bring Kevin Costner back, even though the real Capone probably died much
Elliot Ness
younger
died at the age of 54, I think.
Right. I don't know if Costner probably is in his what is he now, 70? I don't even know.
He's in his 70s, yeah.
Bring back Kevin Costner for one last adventure as Capone, as Elliot Ness. That would have been cool.
Like a Sherlock Holmes type of thing. Elliot Ness faked his death so he could get Capone one more time. Who also faked his death.
He has to get him again. And then maybe now it's too late, but when Kevin Costner was still, let's say, in his 50s, totally could have pulled it off.
Yeah, he probably could have pulled off his last case if he had one. I think that's possible. Not many, stories. I mean, Elliot Ness's reputation really did kind of die down after Cleveland. But yeah, we get into this car chase here, and it's a pretty good descriptive car chase. And it's done really quick. They're winding corners, they're on gravel roads, they're going by little cliff sides, and at some point the car careens off the edge of the cliff, and Elliot and Marlowe stop just before they fall off, and they get to the edge. They see the car kind of nose dived into the ground and the mud, and they scale the cliffside down to the car to try and see if there's a body in there. And as they're looking around, they notice up on the ridge this beefy silhouette staring at them, and that is their man. They can't make out who he is, and this is where we get some real passion from Ness, because he's trying to climb up the hill as quickly as possible to get to him, but it's muddy and it's difficult, and
I like this scene. This was a good. See,
Yeah.
this is why I keep saying that it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because I really like the chase. I liked how it ended. That the guy is up there and they can't get to him, and I liked. There were certain beats and ideas and even the way it was written that I liked, but I wish the movie was consistent in pleasing me.
So you felt that you were just kind of vacillating between disappointment and thrill.
I'll tell you the funny thing, and this is such a strange thing. The part where he's actually investigating, there's a lot of things to like. I like that they were trying to desperately find their suspect, and he was like, no, this guy was just looking for a meal. I like that. I liked, even that Marlowe was a cop that, those other guys jumped him for the reason that they did. I didn't mind it. Would have preferred if it was a mistress that he didn't want his wife to know about. Makes more sense as the period of whatever. I think if those guys would have caught him doing what he was doing, I don't know that they would have just focused on the thing, but I won't get into that now.
Well, they didn't go after him because of that. That's the difference, right? So.
Right, but maybe they would have already spread the information. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that would have gone down that way personally, but I like the idea that they're jumping him because of the reasons that they did. Mm-hmm. Some of the politics with Ellie and Ness and these other people that are like annoying him, I didn't mind that. And again, the car chase scene was another kind of high point of the script. Along with with that scene that they
Mm-hmm.
discover the bodies. I like this stuff. The crime, there's a lot of good crime investigation stuff. I like this thing. This was good.
Yeah, I also liked how when the silhouette kind of like vanishes into the night, Marlowe is trying to be encouraging, saying like we'll get another chance, and Elliot's like, no, like we won't. Like that was it. They now know we're on to him. It's going to be a lot harder to find him. I love the subtext from that scene, and I like how as soon as we come to another to the rotunda at City Hall in Cleveland, we got Mayor Burton, who is hey, can you maybe talk to me a little bit about why you fired Davis, because he now just managed to sweep being elected as the county sheriff, which means that he's no longer under your purview. You can't control him now. He's his own separate law entity within the region, and that's going to come with. And I like the conflict that came from this, because Davis, former Commissioner Davis, now Sheriff Davis, has put in his office, as in the sheriff's department, everyone that Ness terminated for suspicion of corruption in the police department. So now he's got this other entity that is always going to be at odds with Ness and what he's trying to do with this investigation. I really like that cause and effect dynamic that came as a result of this. In Ness's efforts to try and clean up the city, he leaves open an opportunity where the very corruption just found another area to fill, so that it could breathe some more for the next foreseeable future. And I dug that, but one of the things that did bother me is this scene where they're at the city hall, and we see that the election has been called and people have won and the incumbent has won, and we got this stuff here. It still looks kind of like the same as the opening. It's him with Edna. They're in public. There's a little passive aggressiveness being done towards Elliot. Ness is making remarks to Edna about Francis as her boyfriend, and she doesn't really deny it, which she's talking about other things. about like maybe Ness should start focusing more on the fact that the people he's working with are allies and helping him solve this case, and he's dwelling on the fact that he hasn't caught this butcher yet, and it's really bothering him, and so much so that at the same time he decides, I'm going to leave. Just not going to hear for pomp and circumstance or accolades or help embolden anyone. He's just walked straight out. And I thought, it's a repeat of the opening again. So it just doesn't feel, it just feels more like an expositional scene as opposed to one of like interesting character drama or growth. That was my opinion on this moment here.
I guess.
So right now, like, time is starting to really, we're jumping through time right now because
wasn't it convenient that the guy immediately got elected to be the sheriff like 5 minutes later?
Well, it was a few months later, but that was a point of contention in the history books here. Like, after Commissioner Davis was relieved of duty, he became sheriff, and there's questions about that because in some records it's he wanted to retire to become the sheriff, like that was his plan, and then other parts had to do with Elliot Ness supposedly terminating him. So we're not sure what the reality is of that context, but that is what ended up happening. Of course, now we're getting into some more creative liberties with what happens next, because we learn a little bit later that Ness has got his officers out on the streets. They're looking for this killer who's kind of gone a little bit more into hiding than they expected. There's this one guy who's drunk at a bar, and he gets upset when someone's trying to get a smoke off of him, and he makes a claim that he's the butcher. And one of the bums inside the bar rises to his feet, and we find out that he's an undercover cop. He's pretending to be drunk, and he arrests this guy. And as they're learning more about the victims, and they're talking to one of the medical examiners, they kind of isolate two possibilities for who this type of this butcher might be. He might actually be a butcher because of the precise way where he's able to dismember the bodies, or he's a doctor of sorts, a surgeon by trade, which kind of overlaps a little bit with some of the suspicions for Jack the Ripper, from a few decades earlier at this point. And when they're interviewing this guy who has claimed that he's the butcher, Marlowe's conducting the interview, and he asks him, like, hey, hold out your hand. And he holds out his hand, and his hand's like shaking because he's got the shakes because of his alcoholism. And he's like, yeah, this guy's not the butcher. And he tells Ness, and Ness is like, okay, he's just really here for as you mentioned earlier, being thrown in jail for 3 square meals a day in a place that's warm. And what I think is kind of fascinating is, like, even the Davis and the mayor are like, well, he confessed, so let's just do that and put it into the paper that we caught the guy. And Ness poses this great question, which he says, well, what happens if another murderer comes again? He says, well, we'll just report it as a copycat killer, and we'll take it from there. And I really dug this scene because it does show the dynamics of the more things change, the more things stay the same. When it comes to politics and image and public safety. I agree.
This was not a bad part. Like I said, there were parts of this thing that I didn't mind. That didn't bother me, no.
No, but I like the dynamic because it does show that Ness is still, despite his own personal hiccups, he's still trying to be honest with the job and honest to the office that he holds. And what's fascinating here is that he's trying to, like, push himself out of the acting commissioner position at the same time. So even though they've got they have this guy in custody and they've realized he's not the butcher, Ness decides for his release to happen like later in the evening, so he can at least get the guy can get a meal and like a good night's sleep for the first time. He shows some humanity to him, and then we get this cool scene where once this guy's kind of let out of the police department, we get the point of view from inside of a car of him being followed. And I like the little bait and switch here because it's implied that this is the butcher following this guy. But we get a different reveal a little bit later because while this guy's being followed, we get a side story, a really brief one, of essentially, a mafioso meeting up with one of the girls turning tricks in the city, saying like, she has to pay her protection fee, and when she doesn't have the money for it, she then has to pay in another way. And as this transaction is proceeding, he gets chloroformed, and this big shadowy figure kind of looms over the woman, and now we've got two dead bodies, and the head of the organized crime in the city is really upset because this is, I guess he's the nephew of the guy, or like he is the victim was his nephew, and he wants his own form of revenge and justice. And we quickly find out that the person that Ness released, well, the sheriff has picked up and has been interrogating him, in his facility.
Right.
And the sheriff has accepted his confession, and instead of letting him go through a trial, the mafioso comes in to have a talk with him, and then leaves his cell while cleaning off his bloody hands. And when Ness gets there and opens the door, he finds that the suspect, the bum that confessed to being the butcher, has put his neck in a noose, a handmade noose, and has strung himself up, so to speak. And Elliot, desperate to try and hope that he's not dead, is grabbing him by the knees and trying to lift him up. And Marlowe's there letting him know, like, it's too late, there's nothing we can do at this point. And Ness is just absolutely like super pissed off at Davis for allowing this to happen, because not only is this going to be misinformation to the public, it's also a complete insult to the rule of law and justice. And this is where Ness gets a lot more emotional. Up to this point, like beforehand, he was really kind of reserved, ambitious. He'd have a couple of points where the adrenaline and the desperation would get to him when he's trying to capture this butcher. But from this point here, it's really like he's ready to throw down and beat the crap out of Davis, knowing full well that it would not go in his favor. And yeah, he's starting to feel like things are falling apart for him, and it puts him into a horrible bind, because shortly after, we get one more murder. and yeah, he just is completely distraught. He ends up like, one of the reasons why he's really regretful of not being able to stop this, of not being able to stop the sheriff's department from participating in the death of this homeless guy who wanted to just get the attention so he could get a place to stay, is that when word came out that he was picked up by the sheriff's department, Marlowe goes to his home to tell Elliot Ness, but he's not there. And Elliot ends up going to the apartment of his mistress, and Elliot is so upset because he says if he was at home where he should have been, they would have had enough time to maybe save this guy. And that's when he kind of comes clean to Edna, and they have this, not really an argument, but a discussion where he says, I've been with this other woman for the past year, because I know you've been with this Francis Sweeney guy. And Edna makes a claim saying that, she's spent time with him, but they're only friends, and she's never broken their covenant of marriage. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't trust her anymore. I think she's a lying snake, and I've had it with her.
Um, but this is a part where Ness is basically saying, like, I'm I'm entertaining the idea that maybe we should have a divorce, and she's saying, like, no, we're not breaking that. You can end whatever it is you're doing with her, and you can stay with me, and that'll be the end of it. And for Elliot, he tries to do this. It doesn't go well for him. He's feeling less of what he's expecting, so to speak. Like he feels like he's a failure, even though the papers are reporting that the butcher is dead, and you can go back out on the streets again and live your life as it is. But he's still trying to figure it out, and he ends up getting. This is where the script gets a little more in a dicey situation, because things are not going well for Ness at this point, and so he decides to get drunk at a bar. And while he's drunk, he sees Francis Sweeney with his friends, and he decides to go up to Francis and accuse him of, like, breaking, interfering with his marriage, and kind of being a distraction for his wife. And he's drunk, he's not really making much sense. He's not happy with the way things have been going, and he's kind of trying to blame it on Sweeney as opposed to his own issues. And he ends up trying to take a swing at Sweeney. It doesn't work. So he ends up spitting in his face, and Sweeney just kind of punches him out. And what ends up happening is Elliot Ness wakes up behind bars in the drunk tank. He's bailed out, but we find out from the congressman that there's he definitely ruffled the wrong feathers, because Sweeney, his nephew Francis Sweeney, he was a World War I veteran, fought for his country, was also a medic. And that is where we're going to cut off the spoiler part of the story, because we've just given you a little bit of hint of information as to who might be the butcher in this story, and how Elliot Ness is going to try and figure out a way to capture him. So, with that being said, Price, we know the grievances with regards to the Jekyll and Hyde approach for Ness's character in this script, but share with us some more thoughts on these types of situations that you found.
Well, it's been, out of all the scripts that we've done to date, that when I was a guest, that we've gone over, this has been one of the toughest ones to date, because a lot of times we had scripts that I read it and I said to myself, whoever wrote this doesn't even know how to write a script, or I can't believe this is on any kind of list for anything. I'd be able to find a million issues what I had with the screenplay, and most of them were technical. Now, in this case, when I read the screenplay, I didn't think that whoever wrote this screenplay didn't know how to write it. I just said that to myself, that given what they were trying to do here, I myself was against it. Mm-hmm. And it's a strange situation, because like I said, if this was about John Smith, it's a kind of just, film noir, like you were talking about Raymond Chandler or whatever. This is just like John Smith, and you're reading some kind of pulpy or script about some kind of crime, a period piece in the 30s. I would have been like, okay, that does whatever it does. Mm-hmm. I still think that in spite of what you want to say happened in real life, it's just like if you made today a movie called Pat Garrett. I think that guy was a sheriff in the Old West, right?
Maybe, yeah, I think so.
I think there was such a guy. He's the one that caught Billy the Kid. You did something like that, and you said, okay, Elliot Ness is a more well-known name, but I'm just saying, you build up this story that you're going to show this mythological sheriff, and everybody's excited. I think there's probably one with a better name. Maybe you're making Wyatt Earp. I don't think Wyatt Earp is a real guy, but you know what I'm trying to say?
Okay. Yeah.
You're making that, and everybody's going to see the movie, and it's like, no, we wanted to give a more kind of grounded and noiry and miserable Wyatt Earp thing, and and like in between, there's real cool things that happens with him catching the outlaws and stuff, but in the middle, there's all these like his marriage is crappy and things like that. I would find that a bummer, and it's the same thing about like Elliot Ness. The second that this movie is called Untouchable and the lead character is Elliot Ness, I'm sorry, you have a certain level of expectations from people, especially if you're sort of trying to cash in on the original movie, which I believe that they are in the way they presented it. And in that case, I just have a problem with the movie, with the script.
Right, just because of the expectations from the Untouchables.
Yes, if it wasn't Elliot Ness, if it wasn't trying to capitalize on that thing, I wouldn't mind. It's the same thing we had the movies like Wicked, okay? If Wicked was just some random thing that had nothing to do with the Wizard of Oz and just had like some witches doing whatever they do and just some, bitter ladies or whatever, it's fine. You can go do that movie. The second they try to present it, and especially in the marketing, they are like, how the story started. Now let's see, like, you know the story. Now let's see how it started or whatever it is. All the marketing that they did for Wicked, it was built upon the fact that you like The Wizard of Oz. I'm talking about the movie. You like the original movie, and they want to give you a feeling that they're legitimately doing a prequel and, in a way, a sequel to that movie. And that's what I didn't like about Wicked. It's like, you want to go do your own thing, go do your own thing. Don't try to piggyback off somebody else's success. And I feel like maybe this movie isn't as bad as Wicked in that sense, but it's also trying to piggyback off of something that other people did that was successful, build this kind of mythological hero, but then tear him down and make him look just losery enough for like 2026, along with the other modern day stuff that I wouldn't shove in there. So, was there a crime here that was compelling? Sure. Were there scenes in it that I liked? Yes. Did I overall really like this screenplay? And my answer is no. I didn't like it.
So you have a really low threshold for loser when it comes to for Elliot Ness here. I'm a little surprised by that because he does some pretty impressive things throughout this entire script. Just because he's got a conflict with his wife, I would not say that really does tear him down to that station. The other part too, like, and to your point with Wicked, which I don't disagree with the marketing for that, missed the entire point of what Wicked is based off of, which is the fact that it's deliberately presented as a lie. Like, it's based off a children's book where it's like, the quote unquote real story of what Wizard of Oz was from the perspective of the witch, and it was done as a satire, and the musical itself doesn't really quite nail that on the stage part of things. They wanted to have a bit more claim it's a bit more authentic, and then the movie as a byproduct kind of ran with that as well. But it was part of an ongoing series of books where they would take the fairy tales, the Brother Grimm fairy tales, and all these other children's fairy tales, and say, we're going to tell it through the perspective of the bad guy, but the whole idea is that it's to teach children in regards to writing that from the perspective of a villain, they still see themselves as the hero. And you're supposed to see through that. It's a critical thinking exercise. Unfortunately, some of the people that took those stories and elevated them to different media really did not pick up on that lesson, and that shows. And in this case here, I think you're just having trouble reconciling the fact that the mythological version of Elliot Ness, while fun and entertaining, works for the story of the Untouchable, but this is also based off of another significant event in his story, and instead of making him a mythological type of figure, they decided to be a bit more respectful of the character and also respectful of the people that know this story. You may not like the decisions, and I completely find that absolutely fair, but it's one thing to gloss over, important points of a human being, a real life figure, and it's to make them far better than they actually were, versus another part where you can go the exact opposite, where you start making up a whole bunch of things to try and tear them down. And in this case here, I don't think they made up anything deliberately to try to tear them down or tear them down at all, because regardless of how the screenplay resolves itself in relation to the mystery of the criminal, the way it ends when it comes to Ness is the fact that he he has decided that he's not going to let his job compromise the personal feelings he has for people in his family. And even though he gets divorced, and we know that he gets divorced and he marries again, he's doing so with a clear conscience now, and he's doing so with that he's going to not be as obsessive and ego-driven as he's was known to be, and be a bit more of a disciplined person, and kind of, balance his life out better. And that's what the ending ended up being, because, truth be told, when he left Cleveland, he was not well liked by the people of Cleveland. That's why he left. And I think the fact that he was able to not let that tear him down emotionally, especially the way the script does it, shows that he was a really strong character despite the flaws that he had to experience during this investigation. But I will say it's a little bit too long of a script, in my opinion.
It is kind of long, yes.
And yeah, mine would be more like a reluctant green light, because it would need some trimming. And I would say it's distinguished enough of its identity to not be like the Untouchables, because I would say if it still had Edna being really supportive and him kind of going through the same beats as the Untouchables, I'd then be a lot more convinced with your argument that, yeah, they're trying to piggyback off of the Untouchables. But this script really does make some good effort to focus primarily on the butcher of Cleveland and him getting this, trying to capture this guy with all these obstacles of the sheriff's department, of the political pressure, and then of his wife kind of coming to the realization that if this is how he's going to behave every time there's a big case around, is she really happy with that type of life? And I think those are very valid questions, and I think they're a bit more honest to the character itself, and I don't think it does so in a way that tears him down. So that's my kind of opinion there. And with that being said, let's check in with the Patreon here, because for all of our Patreon members...
did you figure out if I was going to greenlight it or not?
Oh, well, that's a good question, because you did say that you didn't like it. So let's go with you. Is it a green light or a pass?
It is a 100% pass. The only thing I would do, because this is not a poorly written screenplay, it is a bit long, you're right, but it's not necessarily poorly written. I'd invite the people that wrote it and say, listen, you guys are able to write a screenplay. Now take this one, remove all that kind of relationship drama nonsense and modern day crap that doesn't need to be there. Mm-hmm. Give me more of a hero, even if it's a tragic hero in a way, because I don't want to say how this thing ends, but there's a bit of a tragic hero element to it. Even if they want to go that route, I can still go along with it. If they make him look like more of a mythological American hero, I'm willing to go with something of a tragic ending that's bittersweet or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. I can compromise on some things. They got to delete all that, like a lot of that relationship crap. I don't want miserable bum Elliot Ness. I want Elliot Ness like, the American hero. And when you say, well, they're being true, even if they said we wanted to be true to history, whatever, I'd say whatever they said in that Liberty Valance movie. It's like, whenever I can have the myth or the legend, I'll take the myth any day of the week, or whatever it is. I don't remember the line in Liberty Valance, but that's like the point of the whole movie. That they think that one guy's the hero, but he's not really the real hero. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, but this screenplay does still make him the hero. The difference being is that
not in a way that feels satisfying to me. And if I don't feel like fist pump, like, happy mm-hmm. that he's like the man, then I don't like this movie. So unfortunately, those guys could either fix their script or leave and never return.
I mean, the one thing is that the question being is he's still a hero. He just doesn't. It's just the fantasy of the hero is not as important as what's doing right. So
I'm gonna put this in another way.
Okay.
I'm thinking now about your average Joe. What does your average Joe think when he thinks of Elliot Ness? Cool hero, American hero guy.
I don't think your average Joe knows who Elliot Ness is in this generation.
I am telling you that this is what. Maybe I'm wrong, and you know what? So call me like out of touch. I'm a boomer.
No,
whatever
I'm not
you
thinking
want.
you're out of touch. I think you're actually better in touch as a result that you know who Elliot Ness is. It's sadly that society is out of touch.
The American hero. I don't want anybody, not on my watch. On my watch, I don't care. I don't care that in his real life he drank and his wife left him, or he left his wife, or whatever it is. I don't care about any of that. None of that matters. He is either the American hero, or they can take this movie. I don't want to say anything bad. They can place it somewhere else. They can place it in a special place. They don't want to make him the hero, if you know what I mean.
Right.
They can find a special place to put that screenplay, if you know what I mean.
Right. I think at this point here, you're probably too attached to the fantasy of Elliot Ness from the movie The Untouchables. Then
I'm not the only one. It's one of the best movies. Everybody
it's a
loves
great
that
movie. De Palma is he should be making way more films than he is now, like, because he's that good of a director, and it's tragic that he's not making as many as he should be. But yeah, I mean, I get that. If you want to have a fantasy version of the character, that's fine. But this one here, I will say this: at no point is his morals when it comes to job compromised, and he is the hero at the end of the script. The difference being is that the flaw that they're kind of pushing through, and it's a very fascinating flaw, because it is one that is supported by a lot of the people that have talked about Elliot Ness, is the attention and the reward of doing the right thing was just as important to him as doing the right thing. And this story was about how, because later on that changed with Elliot Ness's career, and this story is about how doing the right thing is more important than getting the accolades for doing the right thing. And that's what ends up happening in this script. And that actually shows him to be an evolved and a better hero. Because do you want a hero that goes out to be a hero because of the fame and celebrity of being a hero? Or do you want a person who's like humble about it and says, no, the fact that I did it and I was able to do it right, and that justice was prevailed and things happened, that's more important than being put up on a pedestal as a hero. Because that is the theme of this story.
I don't mind that theme. Okay, I'm when I look at the ending, the bottom line ending of the screenplay, and sort of like I said, it's bittersweet in a way. I can accept the bittersweetness. I don't love it, but I can accept the bittersweetness as long as, like, throughout the whole movie, consistently, he is that American hero. And then there's almost like a Dark Knight Batman moment where, you got to do whatever is right. Sometimes I don't remember the thing.
Well, the Dark Knight version is he does something bad because it might lead to something right, when it ends up not. So that's Christopher Nolan's kind of, state-controlled lack of agency thing. In this case here, it's more like he did something right, and he's not going to be known. The public is never going to know that he did something right, so to speak.
I don't mind that idea. I don't mind it. I don't love it. Mm-hmm. I prefer to see a movie where at the end, Elliot Ness walks around and everybody says, "You're the man."
They never did that. The world never did that for him.
Again, you're the man again, and he's like, "Well, what can I do? What can I do?" I prefer, I prefer that ending. I don't want to see Elliot Ness like even somewhat of a bum, but I will accept the bittersweet nature of the movie. I will accept that, but not all the relationship drama nonsense and how long it was. They could have just removed a lot of that stuff and focused on the investigation, and already the movie, it's more quick-paced, it's shorter, and it's better already.
Oh, no, I don't disagree with that. I will say some of the I understood what they were trying to do with the subplot of Edna and Francis Sweeney, because there's supposed to be like that dramatic irony there, where is Edna being seduced by the butcher if he is in fact the actual butcher of Cleveland. We don't know at this point, and we don't really know conclusively, so to speak, because of the way things are presented. But yeah, I don't know if that subplot landed as effectively as the writers intended. And then that's why it's a reluctant green light, because the rest of the investigation, the way Elliot Ness maintains his own moral center and his sense of justice for the job itself, despite the politics of things pushing against him. It's still really well done. Like I like that fact, and I'm not bothered by the flaw of him falling in love with another woman, because he feels like his wife is already kind of distancing himself from him. And the other part too is it's a very interesting way that they were able to take in the facts of the nature and put them into a script that still was able to retain some of the drama of it. And I do like the fact that this story, I will say, because I do enjoy the Untouchables a lot, but this story does have a character arc that's really strong, and I think that's why it got within the top 10 of the blacklist, is because we do have a guy who he's all about justice, but he's also, that's on the same level as his reputation. And this is the story that says, justice in itself is greater than my reputation. And if you were to put Elliot Ness from the beginning of the script exactly as he was there towards the end of the script, I don't think he would react the way that he does, with the level of stoicism and confidence and understanding at that time. And I think that shows some pretty decent writing there, and also an interesting way of how you can capture who the real man was without excuse me, sneeze there. who the real man was without compromising the efforts that he made to do the right thing. Because again, listen, there's nothing wrong with a person who, on the public side of things, does everything right, but in his private life, so long as he's not breaking a law, is having some difficulties. That is humanity. In some cases, that can be relatable. In some cases, that can access some interesting drama, but it can also show that despite the conflicts that man is having in their personal life, they're still able to have the fortitude and the discipline to not have it interfere with their ability to do their job, especially when lives are on the line. And that's really showcased quite prevalently in this script. And I think that's, because you keep calling him a bum, I don't see that at all. I mean, a guy who's having marital troubles, but is still able to keep his head about himself when it comes to, well, what's right and what's wrong, and how do we conduct this investigation, and how far can we go before we are compromising even the integrity of the offices with which we hold. Like that's pretty significant.
Yeah. All right. I mean, listen,
No, it's
I
okay.
guess we can agree to disagree on this one.
Sure.
I personally feel the way I feel about it. I'm thinking, see, you could think to yourself, well, you're just so you're looking at it like a little kid or whatever it is, and it's fine. But what I'm saying is that I know that there's more people out there like me. And you're right, some of this new generation don't know who Elliot Ness is. They're not going to go see this movie anyways. If you're making this movie, you're hoping that somebody like me wants to go see it. You'd best not invest a gazillion dollars in it either. If you can keep the budget like to a relative minimum, it's not going to be for like $2 because it's a period piece. But if you could keep this at like, $30 million and do something interesting that, some maybe people like me would like, maybe you got yourself a movie if you fix this screenplay. Otherwise, it doesn't have a shot. It's just going to lose money. It's going to be a big loser. Even if the critics say, like, this is the best thing ever, the best thing that ever happened, it's going to lose money.
I mean, when you basically pigeonhole parameters like that, yeah. But again, a period piece of this type, you can do this mid-budget, but we don't really live in a entertainment industry that uses mid-budget anymore. So this would just more likely be a sample that circulates around. I don't think it'd go into production. For that alone, just the nature of the industry right now, the way things are going. But okay, so we got a pass for you, a reluctant green light for me. We'll check in with the Patreon. So yes, if you're a member of the Patreon, you get to vote on whether you green light or pass the script. We announced what we'll be reviewing on the Saturday show, Monday mornings. For the participants on the Patreon, they were in a disagreement with you, Price. They have 100% were voted to greenlight it, but that makes this more interesting because for over the live show, we have a slightly different result, where we have 75% of the live audience voted to pass and 25% voted to greenlight. So I will say that makes this a very interesting script because we have a little bit of a divided perspective on it, and I think that goes to its benefit. It gets people talking. It has people's, looking deeper into what it is. So I think that's pretty interesting there. So with that being said, Price, where can our wonderful audience find you out there on the interwebs?
Well, I have a channel called Price of Reason where I do reviews and some news items, and then there's a channel called Price of Reason Live, both of them on YouTube. And on Price of Reason Live, we do live streams every week at 10 p.m., which you're very, very often a guest on, thankfully. And that's where we've been looking at. Initially, we had a Quantum Leap show that we did that at that hour and time, but now we kind of go through old TV shows, pilots, and things like that and see how they were put together. So if people aren't familiar with that, they can go check that out. But once again, thank you for inviting me to be on the show. I always enjoy being here.
Yeah, I love having you here.
I hope it was okay. I can see it makes me feel better that the chat, versus the Patreon, not everybody feels the same way about it. And perhaps in a way, this is sort of a divisive script. In a way, even though it's not poorly written, because of the idea behind it, the concept is divisive somehow.
I think the fact that the writing team wanted to be a bit more authentic with the history of the character might be the divisive nature of it. And you never know. Maybe there's a different way to present those facts that still kind of fit better in a better mold with the the investigation plot itself.
I'll tell you a final comment.
Sure.
In the
Please.
Untouchables in the original movie, Elliot Ness had to put up with a lot of crap from a lot of people. In his professional life, one of the things that kind of felt good was that he had that anchor of his wife that was so supportive. Now you could say in real life he was a jerk and whatever it is.
I don't think there's ever any argument that he was a jerk in real life. Like that's not even really presented in the script. Because he's when he finds that his wife is not receptive, he's responding to that being not receptive, and now both of them are kind of digging themselves in that hole throughout that relationship.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I like that she was she was his rock. She was so supportive of him, and I thought that added something very kind of wholesome to his character. It was so crucial. Basically, in that movie, you had a lot of these kind of action and crime, whatever, much better than in this screenplay, by the way, and with Sean Connery also much better. With that character and whatever it is. But I'm saying, let's just say you had a good investigation, good everything going on, but the in-between scenes, the quieter scenes with his wife, it was a good balance that she was so supportive of him, and she was this kind of loving wife and so wholesome. To go here that he has to put up with this nonsense bureaucracy and everybody annoying him within this tough investigation, but also at the same time, she's she's not the supportive wife. To me, it's just like a bummer. And at the end, I know that you can say they want it to be gritty and noir and true to history and whatever. There is that feeling of the deconstructionism in the modern era, and I don't need it. Not for Elliot Ness. So that's why I feel the way I feel. At the same time, I respect that you didn't hate the script. I also admit it. It wasn't poorly written necessarily. It's just, I have issues. And I guess... this is a rare case. I think this is the only time to date where one of us has greenlit it and the other one hasn't.
I mean, again, we're both on the same page that it's well written, but yours is of the opinion of you like the mythological version of the character. I have no preference. That's just it. I'm just interested for a good story well told, and I think this, for the most part, with a couple of minor, for the most part, was a good story well told. Has a couple of issues, but not enough to cripple it to the point where I would say, no, this is not worth pursuing further.
All right. Well, I think we did our part here with this one.
Yeah, I think we did. It was a good conversation because I liked the points that you brought up. They're very valid. And with that being said, we're going to come back again next week with another script. So be on the lookout for that. I want to wish you guys out there listening, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a great weekend, and we'll be here next time. And with that being said, I want to thank Darren M. In the live chat for modding here as well, and all of you wonderful people who are listening in today. Greatly appreciated. And have a great weekend, guys. And never forget, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.